What do you get when you've got a bunch of musically talented freaks from multiple bands not seemingly going anywhere in the hardly populated Midwest with nothing better to do? They form one giant group together and make up one of the most notable and wildest bands of the past 20 years. This is a beginner's guide to Slipknot. Hailing from Des Moines, Iowa, Slipknot came into the spotlight lumped in with the nu metal movement in the late 1990s. The band formed out of the ashes of other groups in the area that never really made it past their local scene. Formed in 1995, Slipknot had a rough go to start their career, specifically in finalizing their lineup. By the time they released their first and self-titled album in 1999, the band had already had 5 members quit or be fired. This led to the final roster at the time of Slipknot's release, looking like number 0 on turntables, number 1 on drums, number 2 on bass guitar, number 3 on additional percussion, number 4 on guitar, number 5 on sampling and effects, number 6 on even more percussion, number 7 on even more guitar, and number 8 on lead vocals.
Is that all the light we can get? All I see are crazy motherfuckers. Give me all the light you got. Let me see all of my fucking friends.
Each identifiable by their own unique mask they tweak with each album release. 1999 would be a huge year for the group, as prior to the album's release they were part of the 1999 Ozfest lineup, opening for acts such as Black Sabbath, Rob Zombie, Deftones, and Slayer. This great opportunity to showcase their insane stage presence thrust them into popularity, and as they would continue to tour into the following year, they only grew more and more. Their sound at this time in the band's history was fierce and as chaotic as they looked. This, coupled with the 20-minute home video Welcome to Our Neighborhood, as well as 2 singles from Slipknot, Wait and Bleed and Spit It Out, had the band's debut album certified platinum within a year of its release, becoming the fastest selling debut metal album ever, as it was met with constant great reviews. Pairing with producer Ross Robinson for the record didn't hurt either, as his personality and thought process fit perfectly with that of the band's. He was intense with them in the studio to break through to the sound and attitude we now know them for. By 2001, the band was back in the studio working on their follow-up album to be named Iowa. Many of the members consider this recording period as being the worst in Slipknot's history. All the members were stressed and irritable trying to live up to the expectations set by their breakthrough debut, and as they had begun indulging in the success of their previous album, this brought along additional negatives that come with that, such as alcoholism and drug addiction. This dark cloud cast over the band was evident in the music they were putting out. Iowa certainly had a more dreadful feel to it than Slipknot, especially in the 15-minute-long titular closing track, a largely atmospheric piece in which Corey Taylor unsettlingly sings about a dead body recorded while he was cutting himself with a shard of glass.
So blue, so broken. Paper doll decays. I haven't left you yet.
Despite this, however, constant promotion, the 2 singles Left Behind and My Plague, and the DVD Disaster Pieces, Iowa actually scored better on the Billboard charts than its predecessor, peaking at number 3, and most incredibly being certified platinum in just under a month and a half, an astonishing feat for the band. With the album and tour finally out of the way, the band took a much-needed hiatus. with members going off to work on their own side projects, most notably Corey Taylor and Jim Root reviving Stone Sour, the band they initially left to join Slipknot. This break didn't last long, as by 2003 the band was already together recording again, refreshed and no longer at each other's throats, though it wasn't easy to get here. There were some doubts on if they could form again to release an album, with everyone doing relatively well with side projects, and how miserable their last times together as Slipknot were, except for Paul Gray. With the band having a commendable no-drug policy, which was made more lenient following their initial worldwide success, it came as a huge shock when in 2003 Gray was arrested following a car crash, after which police found marijuana and cocaine on him. The group managed to pull through, however, and now working with legendary producer Rick Rubin. Members do have differing opinions on their experience working with Rubin for this album though, with Corey Taylor saying he only even met him 4 times and that he was never really there, calling the deal a waste. In 2004, Slipknot's third album, Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses, was released to the world with a more accessible sound, as evidenced by the ballads and greater focus on vocal melodies, as well as practically no profanity nor explicit themes. This ultimately proved successful, as the album peaked a single spot higher than the band's previous best, reaching number 2 on the Billboard, helped by its 5 singles. Duality, Vermilion, Vermilion Part 2, Before I Forget, and The Blister Exists were all released individually, with Before I Forget winning Slipknot their first Grammy in 2006 for Best Hard Rock Performance. This album too would go platinum, taking just under a year to do so. Sean Cran mentioned how the band noticed they would perform even better if they knew they were being recorded, as they had been for Disaster Pieces. The 24-track live album peaked at 17 on the Billboard, was well received, and spawned a single in the performance of The Nameless, making it technically a 6th single for Volume 3. As with the previous 2 albums, the band again released a DVD, The Liminal, Inside the Nine. Slipknot once again split up briefly for members to focus on other projects. In 2008, the group was back together and working on their 4th album, All Hope Is Gone. This album saw Slipknot continue to develop their overall sound for the album. They wanted to make this the heaviest one yet. They were also experimenting a lot at this time, yet out of the 30 songs they came up with, none of the more outlandish ones made the cut. As has been the case with prior albums, this one wasn't necessarily easy to put together either. The band didn't seem very coordinated. Jordison was the first to get back in the studio, and as a lot of the members weren't yet motivated enough to contribute, Joey had all his parts recorded, then pieced out after a week of practice, having grown impatient. Root was the next one to step up, working with producer Dave Fortman to add guitar over Jordison's recorded material. He too got all his parts done before the rest of the band were really involved. This most likely was the most distant the Slipknot members have been with each other while in the recording process, but regardless, the release of All Hope Is Gone saw them again surpass their previous mark in terms of Billboard album peak, this time reaching the pinnacle, as well as having 5 songs from it released as singles. All Hope Is Gone, Psychosocial, which won an MTV Music Video Award, Dead Memories, Sulfur, and Snuff. The title All Hope Is Gone is fitting even, meant not to be pessimistic, rather that you're mistaken if you have any hope of pinning down Slipknot to a single genre or sound, and if you think you've heard all they have to offer. The album went platinum almost 2 years exactly after its release. Contrary to this, however, most band members regard this as their least favorite album in the group's discography.
Developing story right now. Just within the last few hours, we've confirmed that the bassist for the band Slipknot has died.
Slipknot would be rocked forever not long after this, with the sudden death of founding member Paul Gray. Understandably, the future of the band was very uncertain at this time.
Yesterday we lost our brother. And the world seems a little smaller because of it.
In the interim, they would release another film documenting their recent tour, this one entitled Sicknesses, as well as the greatest hits album, Antennas to Hell. They would begin touring again in 2011, and even creating their own annual festival starting in 2012, Knotfest. During the writing process of their upcoming fifth album, the lineup would be shaken even more, with Joey Jordison being dismissed from the band under very mysterious circumstances. Slipknot had posted on their website that Jordison had quit, prompting him to reassure fans over his Facebook that he had in fact not quit, and that this was news to him. Only in 2016 did the drummer come forward and say he had to leave due to his development of transverse myelitis, a condition in which one's spinal cord becomes inflamed. One can only assume this is what got the other band members mixed up, as they thought he was relying on drugs, leading to Slipknot to release him by email. The group would continue on and release Point 5, The Grey Chapter, in 2014. The bass work on the album was done by Donnie Steele, who was actually the predecessor to Craig Jones on guitar before he left Slipknot in 1996. He was invited to rejoin the band but declined, leading them to find bassist Alessandro Venturella and drummer Jay Weinberg, who were supposed to remain anonymous as the rest of the band had when they started, but with the internet being what it is, people were able to identify the two. It was a rough initiation, as they were stepping into roles of longtime and much adored band members. Jay and Alessandro had the opportunity to design their own masks, yet the rest of the band was pretty disappointed with the outcome, and the two had new ones made and given to them, and were never expected to become full members of the band. The Grey Chapter was a success despite this, with many critics praising the emotion and lyrics toward the former bassist. Corey Taylor described their sound at this time as a watered-down All Hope Is Gone. Once again, they had an album at number 1 on the Billboard Albums chart. However, this would be the first Slipknot album to not reach platinum certification, marking 1 million sales, and currently sits at gold. The Grey Chapter also had 5 singles released from it, being The Negative One, The Devil and I, Custer, Kill Pop, and Goodbye. They also released a live CD in 2017 entitled Day of the Gusano, of one of the group's shows in Mexico on this tour. Slipknot would once again briefly break up following this. The band was back and recording for their 6th album in 2019, We Are Not Your Kind. Not long before the release, though, Slipknot would face another shift, as Chris Fane sued the band under the belief he wasn't getting his fair cut of their revenue from music-related businesses the group had set up. This long, ongoing legal process has yet to be resolved. Fane was now out of the picture and replaced with an unnamed character dubbed Tortilla Man, who it didn't take long for fans to identify either as Michael Pfaff, though the band has still not given any indication that this is true. Sean Cran and Jim Root were the first to start putting together material for the album, dating back to as early as 2017, with the two considering even making this a double album. It turned out not to be, but the group was in the mindset of creating something artsier than they had before, and it shows. We Are Not Your Kind was so much more atmospheric, with more interludes than the band had ever utilized before, and something we really hadn't heard from the group since Iowa. On top of this, they tried to make it their heaviest at the same time, with some critics comparing it in that way to Iowa as well, and also All Hope Is Gone. This, coupled with its 4 singles, Unsainted, Solway Firth, Birth of the Cruel, and Nero Forte, led the way for We Are Not Your Kind to be praised by many. In addition to these, they also released a single in 2018 that was not included on the album, All Out Life. For the band's 3rd release in a row, they would peak at number 1 on the Billboard. However, a year after its release, it has yet to receive any album sales certification in the United States. Slipknot would be a hard band to omit when talking about metal music of the 2000s and 2010s. Their stage presence is in the upper echelon of acts, from the group as a whole in their intensity, beating each other up, to individuals like Sid Wilson and his stage diving, clown dragging people in the crowd tied up with a microphone, Jordison setting his drum set on fire. Their image has always been so captivating that when they first unveiled their All Hope Is Gone era masks online, 8 million people tuned in the first day to get a look. They even have their own annual carnival, and on top of that, a haunted maze. The band has one album, being The Grey Chapter, to receive a Grammy nomination for Best Rock Album, and 9 of their songs also nominated for either Best Rock or Metal Performance, with Before I Forget in 2006 being the lone winner. They've been more successful in rock and metal music publisher voting winning multiple awards from magazines like Kerrang!, Revolver, and Metal Hammer. It is unclear when or if the band will release a new album. There seems to be talk on both sides of the spectrum. There is, however, an album named Look Outside Your Window, made up of some of the more experimental work done during the All Hope Is Gone sessions between Corey Taylor, Sean Cran, Jim Root, and Sid Wilson. It was supposed to be released sometime during the We Are Not Your Kind tour, yet was pushed back due to the COVID pandemic. The group considers this separate from the Slipknot discography, as it is only the 4 members on it, but on top of that, because of how different it is from their previous material, sounding more like rock and even having artistic qualities you might hear from a band like Radiohead, as Corey Taylor put it. Who knows what the future holds, but what a hell of 20 odd years it's been that we can fondly look back on.
I wander out where you can see inside my shell. I wait and bleed. I felt the air rise up in me, kneel down and clear the stone on the wrist. I wander out where you can see inside my shell. I wait and bleed. Goodbye, a woman of my town. The night is but of this time. Everything is turning black for me. My ears are running cold. The air is standing straight up. This is not the way I picture me. I can't control my shakes. How the hell did I get here? Something about this so very wrong. I have to laugh out loud. I wish I didn't like this. Is it a dream or a memory? I felt the air rise up in me. Kneel down, clear the stone and lips. I wander out where you can see inside my shell. I wait and bleed. Get out of my, I guess I don't need this. Why didn't I say that?
Who is Slipknot?
What do you mean by that? I don't understand the question. Give it to me again. What the hell are you talking about? I don't understand what the hell you're saying.
Who is
I
Slipknot?
don't understand what the hell you're saying.
Okay, can you explain to me about the band?
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody knows what you say, Sid.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. It was a different idea I had for a series. This was the first attempt at it. Let me know what you loved, let me know what you hated. I tried to just make it a unbiased, basic overview of the band so that if you considered getting into them and didn't know where to start, at least now you have a rough outline. So yeah, share your thoughts with me. On top of that, are there any other artists that you've considered getting into but just don't know where to start? Give me a shout and we'll see what we can do. As always, you're a blessing. Take it easy.